Okay, Leon had a good question before we go any further, and that is, let me read it exactly. Stephen, maybe talk a bit about posture briefly. Had to see a doc today to get an injection to get my back sorted. Okay. So we as a culture have incredibly bad posture. The furniture, the way it's designed, if you look before the 1920s, furniture was designed very differently, but then we had the cool guys come along, the flappers and all that, and it was cool to lounge, and that's cool too, but anytime we start lounging like that, we compromise our backs. A lot of us are working in front of computers and not doing that properly, and a lot of us sit all day, so there's lots of different moving elements. I am not a doctor. I don't pretend to play one on the internet. So if you're having issues like Leon did, go to a professional, go to a doctor to get that checked down. But I will say that the back many times can be rehabbed by going through physical therapy, by adjusting posture, by doing some very basic exercises and stretches. Really it comes down to figuring out which muscle group needs to be strengthened and which needs to be lengthened or stretched. Because all too often we stretch something and in reality it needs to be strengthened, okay? So the best book you can get is 8 Steps to a Pain-Free Back and using primal posture techniques or something. Anyway, Esther Gockiel wrote this book. Don't let the title throw you off. She went and visited indigenous cultures that had zero back pain, but spent all day bent over in bean fields or spent all day in these like situations in our modern world that we'd say, oh my gosh, that would kill my back, when really the thing killing your back is sitting all day and doing that improperly. So she studied how babies naturally sit, how babies naturally stand, and when you start to look at this, it makes a lot of sense. I know for a fact, going through a lot of what she has, or she taught, really helped me. I was also a personal trainer for 7 years, so I do have a lot of information on the muscular side of what's going on. So specifically, I'm guessing you're saying low back pain, Leon, would be what we're dealing with. So we sit a lot at the drum set. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see how I sit. And oftentimes, how do we sit? When we sit down, we sit like this, right? And what's the problem with this? The problem with this is twofold. I'm slouching up here. And then the other problem is we don't often look at, check out my tailbone. I just changed my sitting position. I can actually feel it in my low back right now. So what I did is I tucked my tailbone, when the natural way to sit down is the glutes, which are one of the largest muscle groups on your body, were made to support all of this, right? So when we sit down, many of us tuck our butts and sit like this. And so we're sitting directly on the tailbone, and it's just a really improper way to sit. Instead, the next time you sit down at your kit, and this will take some practice, poke your butt out like this and sit down directly on your actual, this has turned into like a lesson I didn't expect it to be. So sit down directly on this. Instead of sitting like this, sit down where you tuck your butt out and you sit on your haunches. So do you see the difference in the posture? Before, it was here. I was sitting on my tailbone. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm fully supported by the glutes and I feel really centered. Now I fixed the upper because what I did is to fix my posture, my pain was in the mid back, and I found that my chest was way stronger than the muscles underneath. I won't get into an anatomy lesson. The muscles underneath my scapula or your shoulder blade. So what I needed to do was get my shoulders back and sit up straight. You don't want this huge crazy curve. You just don't want to slouch like this. So kick the butt back and then roll the shoulders back. And we now have the makings of a correct posture. You don't want this, that's sway back. I'll tighten my shirt so you can see. That's sway back. You simply want this, but you don't want this. Okay, it's a slight difference, and it's all the difference in the world when you're playing a 4-hour gig. If I play a 4-hour gig sitting like this, man, I start hurting within 20 minutes. But if I tuck my butt back and I sit like this, where I'm on this largest part of my body, like this big muscle group, then that's going to start helping. As you play though, you're gonna start wanting to do this. So you have to constantly remind yourself. That's one of the reasons why I don't like backs on my rest, because I tend to lean back into it and I start slouching. So I would rather support myself like this. Look at Antonio Sanchez. He's an excellent, excellent example of posture at the drum kit. Antonio sits very, very well, and it's a weird thing to notice about Antonio, but he sits very well at the drum kit. And so now, if we start playing before, typically how we sit down is we would sit down like this, tuck our butt, and now we're playing like this, right? This is how this just looks unhealthy to me. It's how you see a lot of drummers playing. Watch Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich had insane back problems. It was because he played bent over like this. We're not made to do that. We're made to sit up. But you can't just sit up, because when you sit up like this, you're sitting up directly on the tailbone, okay? So you can't just sit up. That's why whenever we tell kids, hey, sit up, they sit up, but then they slouch back down because they don't have the correct support here. What we need to say is, tuck the butt back, sit down, and now we sit up. Because now you can even see, I got junk in my trunk back there hanging off. That's what you want. This was made for us to sit on. There's a reason why it's big. It's made for us to sit on. So that's going to be the first thing. And then the second thing you need to do is when we sit for long periods of time, Leon, there are certain muscles that are shortened. A muscle that's shortened is simply because we've kept it in a shortened position. So when we stand up, the hamstrings, which connect right in here in the low back, they lengthen. The problem is if we've sat for a really long time and we don't have a regular practice of stretching our hamstrings, when we stand up, they've been shortened for so long. That's why when you get out of a car and you stand up, your back is sore. When you stand up, the hamstrings pull on this low part of the back. And that pull is the pain that you feel. How do we fix that? You stretch the hamstrings and you strengthen the core. So some basic abdominal exercises, some basic planks, and some, obviously, consult a professional. Don't engage in an exercise program without talking to a doctor first. All of those things. I am not a doctor. But I have helped a lot of people with back pain whenever I was training years ago, and I've helped myself. So strengthen this guy. Imagine it as a wrap around you. A couple of basic just crunches, some side bends, some planks are great if you have time at work. Just 60-second planks on the floor, half planks if you can't do a full plank, and that's going to start correcting your problem. Some low back exercises, and then you need to stretch the hamstrings. Stretch the hamstrings, very simple. Lay on the floor, pull your knee into your body. That's starting it. Another one would be standing straight up and bending over to touch your toes, but keeping, don't slough like this, keeping the back straight and stretching like this, and immediately you'll feel it pull right there. Don't ever go into pain. Go until you feel it pulling just a little bit, and then back up. And do that just a very couple times slowly, and let that stretch kind of pull there. The best time to stretch is after you get out of a warm shower or after you go on a light walk. So after you're warmed up. That's when we need to be stretching. Cold muscles, stretching cold muscles has the tendency to pull them. So that's the two things I would do, Leon. Adjust your posture. If you want to, grab that book. It's excellent. It'll rearrange the way you sit, the way you stand, the way you sleep. It'll really change some things, and you'll feel much better. And then realize that what happened on that gig is probably aggravated from a lot of time spent doing things wrong. So when we stand, we oftentimes stand like this. We stand sway backed. We stand with our shoulders forward and our butt tucked in. Whereas now when you see me stand, you'll see me standing with I'm not sway back. I'm not like poking my butt out, but it's definitely not this, okay? So this is the correct posture. Not this, but right in the middle, okay? And you'll find that everything is there. So many times we aggravate a problem that was already there. Sorry, that took a little bit longer to explain, but that's a complete explanation for you.